Well, I think a lot of times there are people who don't quite understand how lines work. And sometimes it's not completely balanced out. People think that bookmakers throw out a number and then their goal is to get to 50-50 of the money. Not necessarily true, as we've shown on the Action Network, that there are many weeks where sometimes 80 or 85% of the money is on one team, and bookmakers are okay with that. To talk a little bit more about this and what exactly is happening with the Bucks Patriots game this week is Jay Croucher. He's the director of trading at PointsBet. Jay, thanks for joining us. I've got to start with just the overall premise of balancing the lines and how it really works. You guys aren't trying to get to, as I know, based on the fact that I see every week that you have percentages of money that are so lopsided. You guys aren't trying to get to 50-50 in every game. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we don't care about 50-50. All we want to do is get the number right. And then from there, we live with the consequences. If we were to be constantly shifting our markets to try and get 50-50, then what we're doing there is we're just shrinking our expected margin. So we will have large imbalances all the time, often on favorites, often on Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. In the Super Bowl, 90% of our money was on Kansas City. This week, in the game that we're going to talk about, Tampa Bay, they have over 90% of our handle on the spread. And we're okay with that because we think the number's right.
So bookmakers essentially are making bets too. It's not only the bettors.
Exactly. Yeah. And we have internal models and things that, help us set an opener, and then we move off of informed money as it comes in. But, we don't really care too much about the weight of public money in terms of altering our lines. We're always going to defer to the sharp bettors to inform money that comes in, and that will tell us that our line is correct.
Okay, so let's talk about this Patriots Bucks game. Obviously, Tom Brady returning to Foxborough and potentially becoming the all-time leading NFL passer. He'd have to have an incredible game, but that could happen. There's so much talk about this game, and yet I think before the season started, it might have opened at 3.5 to the Bucks, and since we've had some more data, it opened at 5.5. People in general, the public thinks, God, that just seems too low, and it got up to 7. And it just seems too low. And you're telling me that 90, from all the sports books I've heard of, 90 to 98% of the money is on the Bucks. Why doesn't it go to Bucks -9?
Well, I think that the line has moved plenty already. Like you said, it opened around 3.5 or 4 preseason with look-ahead lines, and then on Sunday it was 5.5. Now it's into that key number of 7, where it's finally met a little bit of resistance from sharps. I just think that this game is just the perfect recipe for the public to line up on one side, where you've got the road team is the favorite. They're the elite team, the Super Bowl champion, with the explosive offense, where it's so easy to talk yourself into Tampa Bay scoring heavily. And then on the other side, you've got New England, who are a mid-tier team, and their problem is explosive scoring, that they can't do it. And so it's just so easy to see the game playing out with Tampa Bay just putting up points and New England not being able to keep up. But, we trust that this New England defense is really solid. We think the New England offense is probably better than it's shown the first 3 weeks. And we think that Bill Belichick has been planning for this game for years. So, a lot of the models out there, they have this game, at smaller than a touchdown. And it's an interesting thought experiment just in terms of bookmaking, with like what we were talking about in terms of balancing the book, where, this number is getting higher, and it's really something where, we know people are going to bet on Tampa Bay, but how far can we depart from what we think the actual number is, and what can you get away with? Like, if you move to 7.5, we expect that, sharps will hammer that number, and they're already getting involved at 7. So we think that.
Okay, so I gotta ask you that question, right? So here's where your job really comes in, right? Like, if I move it 0.5 point, if I'm at 7 and I move it at 7.5, like, How quick does the money come in that then you could be in a precarious situation?
Or very quickly, particularly when you're going from 7 to 7.5 or 6.5 to 7, 3 to 3.5, all these key numbers. And I think the Super Bowl is a really big and key example of this, where, all of our money was on Kansas City -3. As soon as we would shift to 3.5, then sharp bettors would just hammer Tampa Bay at the 3.5. And so this is another example of that, where, now we've kind of crossed the Rubicon into 7, and for it to go to 7.5, that means that something would have changed among sharp bettors, where there's been a shift towards Tampa Bay, because we're not going to go to 7.5 purely just off of a weight of public money.
I don't know if you can tell me this or not, but do you have like red and green buttons? Like a red is a sharp, like, so how quickly do you know that it's sharp money?
Yeah, we do, instantaneously, basically. So as soon as there is a shift, we'll be on that, in a matter of seconds. And so, and look, and we also, the nature of bookmaking is, you do respect the global market as well. And this is the NFL. This is a hugely liquid sport, and NFL lines, they are very difficult to beat. There's a lot of data and information that goes into these lines. And when a line is shifting, particularly across a key number, it means that there's a lot of information out there in the world that is making that shift.
So this is my final question. As you know, a lot goes into the story that people and bettors tell themselves. Surprisingly, they haven't told themselves the story of what you just mentioned, which is, this is probably Bill Belichick's most important game in 2 years. And we know that, obviously he's a defensive guy. We've made him the genius. Why aren't people telling themselves that narrative?
I think it's because Bill Belichick isn't on the field playing quarterback for the New England Patriots. And it's so hard to, talk yourself into Mac Jones matching Tom Brady. And I think that, the most interesting thing for this game, and why it is, the most compelling game of the season from a narrative perspective, is not so much if New England can actually win or cover. It's just what Belichick thinks is Brady's weaknesses and what he's going to try. Because, obviously they were together for 20 years. Belichick knows Brady inside and out, and just what is he going to do? What does he think the path is to stopping Tom Brady? And so that's really compelling. And then, in terms of the line, in terms of bettors not getting behind Belichick, I just think that, the coach, it's just not something that you can see as viscerally as Tom Brady, launching bombs downfield to Mike Evans and Antonio Brown and co. And so people will just always talk themselves into the explosive offense. It's why we have every week our weight of handle is on Kansas City at the spread, even though they've only covered 1 out of the past 13 games.
Yeah, that's amazing. And when you see any game with the Chiefs at a very difficult number of 45, 55, 40, 55, 56, like those numbers are normally prohibitive, and people automatically just slam the over.
Absolutely. Yeah, people are always going to talk themselves into favorites, into high scoring, just because, one, it's more fun to root for, high scoring, to root for things to happen as opposed to things not to happen. And people are always going to talk themselves, into the great quarterbacks, where, Mahomes is a great example, because people are just terrified of betting against Patrick Mahomes. I think they close their eyes, they see Mahomes throwing 60-yarders down the field to Tyreek Hill, and they just don't want any piece of that. And that plays into betting tendencies a lot.
Jay Croucher, thanks so much for joining us. This has been an awesome and enlightening interview for me.
Thanks, Darren.
PointsBet is the only sportsbook offering spread bets with no juice on all NFL games, including the big Tampa-New England game. Check out PointsBet 48 hours before kick, and you'll find no juice spreads on every game. That means no hold for the book and bigger payouts for the bettor.